recorded to view on the council's website, if you're so inclined. And could I ask IT colleagues to start the recording?
Yeah.
Great stuff. Thank you, Christine. And first thing to do is, Christine, if you want to do the sending and gather any apologies.
Thanks, Chair, and good morning, members. Councillor Douglas Reid.
Here.
Councillor Jim McMahon.
Thanks.
Councillor John McFadden. There.
Good morning. Good morning.
Thank you. Councillor Elaine Cowan.
Here.
I have an apology from Councillor Maureen Mackay. Councillor Ian Linton.
Here.
Councillor Graham Barton.
Yeah, thanks.
Councillor Barry Douglas.
Here.
Councillor Neil Ingram.
Yeah, thanks.
Councillor Claire Maitland.
Here.
Councillor Drew Filson.
Here.
Dr David Lewis.
Yeah.
Claire McKellar.
Here.
Babs Mowat.
I'm here.
I have an apology from Norman Watt. Jackie Livingston.
I'm here.
That's great. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Christine. Okay, now go to the first item, that's declaration of interest. I don't think there's anything obvious. If there's anything you want to declare, no. Okay, and we'll go to item 2, which is set the 2024-2025 revenue budget, and that's over to Joe.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. Members, the report sets out the Council's revenue budget for 2024-25 and seeks approval to remit the recommendations at paragraph 2 to Council when it meets tomorrow. The report itself begins by setting the background and notes that the budget gap for next year was initially £13 million. However, through the application of the recurring saving from the reduction in the employer's pension rate, and by forward booking a further gain associated with the service concession arrangements report, which is considered by Council tomorrow, then the revised budget gap was £7 million, and this was allocated as detailed in table at paragraph 6. And options from Council services totalling £3.513 million are included at Appendix 1 for consideration and approval. Prior to the receipt of the financial settlement in December, it was believed that we had closed the budget gap and balanced the 2024-25 revenue budget. The financial settlement itself was published on the 21st of December, and in line with the commitment to reduce the level of ring-fence grants following the Verity House agreement between Scottish Government and COSLA, around £14 million has been transferred from former ring-fence grants and specific grants into the Council's main general block grant next year. Our budget modelling had assumed a flat cash grant settlement for next year. However, the settlement contained a 0.5% reduction of just under £63 million nationally, with the impact on East Ayrshire being a loss of grant of around £1.5 million. Importantly, the Scottish Government also updated our grant-aided expenditure indicators following analysis of the population data contained within the 2022 census. This reduced our grant-aided expenditure needs-based assessment by around £800,000, and together with other movements, including East Ayrshire making a contribution to the funding floor, this meant that a new and additional gap of £2.7 million opened up at the end of December 2023. The movements in GAE are particularly concerning because what we are seeing is the financial impact of the changing and shifting population in East Ayrshire. And this was discussed during the budget engagement events when we spoke about the funding shift predominantly from the west to east of Scotland, with the settlement and GE analysis now showing that every one of the Council GE headline indicators fell with the exception of adult social care because of the reduction in specific age groupings within our population. Indeed, there were significant reductions in GE indicators for children's services, impacting particularly on education and on the children's and families element of social care. Therefore, the immediate need from late December has been to identify ways to close the gap. Paragraph 6 to 8 sets out the work that was undertaken, including allocating downward GA movements to services, returning the Council's contributions to the Integration Joint Board to the requirements set out in the integration scheme, and also utilising funds following a further review of all of our earlier budget modelling assumptions. Therefore, we have managed to close both the initial and the later gap, a cumulative gap, members, of £9.7 million. But it has been far from easy. We have reduced funding to key services, which will place significant additional pressures on services that are already under substantial strain. It's also the beginning of a trend that will see our grant funding levels reduce and be allocated to other councils because of their rising population. So, members, we need to prepare the council for a different funding landscape and ready our services to operate differently and within a reducing financial resource. In recognising these pressures and in seeking to take all possible actions to support the council, members will be aware that the council strategic framework was considered at the council meeting in October 2023. And it was agreed that time-limited cross-cutting reviews would commence with reviews of employability, financial inclusion, well-being, children and young people services and leisure and culture services taking place, with reports and updates provided to members later this year. Other reviews around waste services, additional support for learning and early years are also taking place to ensure services are delivered within budget, reduce duplication, and prepare the council for what will be a prolonged and sustained period of financial challenge, probably at an unprecedented scale, where change, including service delivery change, will need to be considered. The settlement also included funding to support a council tax freeze. This was initially set at £144 million and later increased to £147 million, taking the recurring share of the funding to the council to just over £3 million. The report before you today notes the recommendation is for council to accept the funding and maintain council tax levels at 2023-24 levels. However, it's important to note that Scottish Water will increase water and sewerage charges by just under 9% next year, and therefore, while our council tax levels may remain static, the bills households will receive will show an increase due to the uplift from Scottish Water. The indicative budget allocations to services are contained within the table at paragraph 69, and it's important to highlight two issues that remain live and will not be concluded by budget setting day. The first is in relation to the £145.5 million removed from the local government block grant and retained by the Scottish Government as a specific grant pending assurances from councils that they will maintain teacher numbers. The council's share of this funding will be allocated once a specific and agreed teacher number total has been determined and agreed with the Scottish Government. In East Ayrshire, we've seen a reduction in our teacher full-time equivalent numbers on the back of our falling school rolls and also the reduction in our children's services GAE. And colleagues are due to meet the Scottish Government in early March to discuss the reduction and agree a specific figure going forward. The council's share of the £145.5 million is around £3.3 million, and officers are preparing for that meeting with Government in a week or so's time. The second matter relates to the recent announcement of an additional £62.7 million for local government, with this made up of a £45 million health and social care consequential allocation, as well as an additional £17.7 million. This funding will only be allocated to councils once two conditions are met. Firstly, that the Chancellor of the Exchequer's spring budget, published on the 6th of March, does not contain a requirement for the Scottish Government to repay earlier consequential funding. And secondly, that councils agree to the council tax freeze and maintain council tax at 2023-24 levels. Whilst this additional funding is extremely welcome, the conditions, especially the one around the spring budget, means that funding has not been included in the figures in this report. Members, you know that the budget generates a series of interlinked reports for consideration by Council. There is this report and the Capital Programme report, which is also on this agenda, as well as the Treasury Management Strategy, which Council will hear tomorrow, and which essentially costs the decisions taken by Council and produces a set of prudential indicators for the year ahead. Paragraph 83 notes that Council in February 2023 approved an affordability cap for the Council's capital programme, and the capital report to be presented at this meeting signals spend of around £265 million by 2028-29, which will take the Council's capital debt levels to over £700 million, resulting in our debt charges increasing to around £28 million each year by 2028-29. Indeed, if that debt charge was a service budget, then it would become the third largest service budget in the council. You will see, members, that the affordability cap is breached after 2026-27. In both the Capital Report and the Treasury Management Report, note a detailed and robust review of the capital programme will take place during 2024, building on the work from the initial review that took place recently. Members, I have to say that this budget has had a different feel to it. The 2024-25 budget has had a substantial gap, which, because of your prudent oversight and strong and effective financial management, has meant that we've been able to close the gap and balance the budget without the use of reserves. However, the normal approach to building budgets will need to change to reflect the impact of funding changes and population decline, and the way we operate will also have to be updated to reflect the funding that will be available to us. On a more positive note, paragraph 90 begins to tell the story about the reduction in the employer's pension rate and the gain that can be achieved by the approval of the service concession report tomorrow. These two non-recurring gains total over £40 million to use over a 10-year period to effect change, deliver early intervention and prevention, reduce future costs, promote the 4 pillars of Christie, tackle poverty and inequality, and help us support those in need. Therefore, members, while there are significant pressures on budgets and future funding, you have the opportunity to make change and transition the council and its services into the future by utilising the £40 million fund. Paragraphs 95 and 96 detail the preparatory meetings that have taken place with colleagues from a range of organisations, and meetings to shape the use of the fund will be convened shortly by the Chief Executive. Finally, members, I would like to note my appreciation to members for their guidance during the many meetings we've had over the last 5 months on the budget, and also to colleagues and to budget holders for their support in preparing the 2024-25 revenue budget. Chair, Cabinet is asked to remit the 12 recommendations at paragraph 2 on page 3 to Council tomorrow, and I'm happy to stop there and take any questions.
Right, thanks, Joe, for your presentation. I think you're right, just to get the kind of tone of where we are. I think you've got that spot on as usual, Joe. I think this has been a difficult budget for us. If we could take any small comfort, we're probably better placed than most authorities, but still, there's been considerable pressure. Some of it, in my view, unfair. I think you're right to point out right at the start some of the issues in relation to some of the crude statistics in terms of JEE. And, because of population decline in a significant part of our authority, that affected the amount of JEE were awarded. And, as we mentioned last week when we were discussing population decline in former coalfield areas, the demand of services is no less for that population decline. In fact, it's probably worse. The demand is significant without, with population of the economically active, as we discussed last week, moving elsewhere. That puts more pressure in terms of the resources that we have to place in these communities. And I made that point when I met the DFM last week as a part of COSLA delegation. And, I think we need to do a wee bit more understanding and just the pressures on that to lobby, if we are to arrest the decline in population in these areas, we need to get a better understanding. Now, I know that the Scottish Government are looking at rural population decline in a conversation with some councillors from Dumfries and Galloway, and that they're using that as a pilot. But, while there is issues in Dumfries and Galloway population decline, I don't think a rural population decline with an industrial population decline in the same place is, it's far worse. It magnifies that problem. And I think there's absolute issues there we need to address with the government. Secondly, maybe just in terms of the issue with teacher numbers and sanctions, and I know we could have made a bit of reference to that. Again, with population and school rules, I think, again, any suggestion of sanctions, I think is extremely unfair. And I made that point as well. And I think we should continue to do so. Just maybe in terms of a wee question before I bring in others. I think it's just maybe, Joe, just to kind of speak about the UK spring government and why we're being kind of cautious. I think there's scenarios there in both cases that might be positive, but in a tax giveaway budget, as you might get pre-election, there could be issues there that we need to remain a wee bit cautious in terms of how we present things today and through the week. Maybe discuss that, expand on that a wee bit, Joe.
Certainly, Chair. Some weeks ago, the UK government allocated what was initially £600 million to local government for health and social care. It then became £500 million. And the consequential impact of that funding to England meant that there's a £45 million allocation to Scotland. You know, and we've discussed this in the past, that the Scottish Government are under no obligation to keep the same badge on that funding when it comes to Scotland, and they're free to use it in any way they wish. We've had notification that £45 million, if it was to come to local government, would be for local government to use as they see fit, and that's the phrase that's in the letter. The cautiousness from Scottish Government is around the Chancellor of the Exchequer spring budget and the potential for there to be a negative consequential to Scotland. In other words, a reduction in budgets at a Westminster level that requires a payback or a clawback of previously allocated funding to Scotland. And so a real concern about a potential for a negative consequential on the 6th of March. So on that basis, while we've been told formally that if the 6th of March budget is favourable, then the funding of the £62.7 million would come, given that that first condition is met, then that's we've been told that, and that's reassuring. But we await the Chancellor of the Exchequer's budget, because there's still that risk of the negative consequential. Unusual though it is, but it's been highlighted as a potential risk.
Thanks, Joe. Barry.
Thank you, Dougie, and thank you, Joe, for that, I think, sombre statement around the financial position that we're in. I am grateful to the work that you have done and your team have done, and to everybody who has made sure that this council is not in a position that many other local authorities are looking at. I welcome the discussion that we will have in due course around the £40 million and where that can be used to real effect. The leader mentioned the grant area expenditure cut with £800,000 this year. Suspect that will only grow as years continue, but it is absolutely right to mention it's a perfect storm. We do have a population decline, but the population that is left behind, if you want to use that phrase, is absolutely ageing, and in many cases we do have higher rates of economic inactivity, and we do therefore need a greater level of service provision to support those people really in need. So it doesn't really seem to square that. That's just a numbers game of moving west to east, just doesn't sit with me, and certainly something I hope that members will take up with the Scottish Government and others as well. So we're in a situation where we are setting a budget today where we still might have an up in the air about £3.3 million when it comes to teacher numbers. We still don't really know what's going to happen with the Tories' budget at Westminster this close to an election. I can only imagine it'll be tax giveaways and tax cuts with no thought whatsoever to the future implications for the good management of this country, and therefore that impacts our budget. So we're sitting here today with two balls in the slates that could have a serious impact on our ability to go forward in terms of we can set a budget, but we still don't really know what's coming down the tracks in just a few weeks. It just beggars belief that we're in this position. It really, really does. The council tax freeze, it wasn't even really fully funded up until last week, where of course we've got a bit more money that's been put in the pot. And I just think once again we have been, we've been putting the altar of the sacrifice. Once again local services cut to the bone. Surely good local government, and I'll quote John McGee in this actually, good government is good local government is good government. We are absolutely at the coalface here. We know what our communities need, yet we're being dictated to by government. And actually, we have two governments whereby there's still things that haven't been decided that absolutely impact our financial situation, which seems bonkers. But we have to set a budget, and we're as late as we can probably go in this next week. So I despair. I really do, Dougie, and I don't think anybody came into this room to make cuts the way we're cutting. And it really is a bleak future for local government ahead. And I really worry for the future when I look at what's coming down the tracks. But I welcome the statement you've given today. I welcome certainly the efforts that you have, yourself, Leader, have made in relation to your discussions at COSLA. I just despair a bit about what's coming down the track and what we've been faced with today. But thank you.
Thanks, Barry. John McFadden.
Thank you. Yes, I'd just like to say thank you to Joe and his team for the fantastic piece of work they've done. Yes, it is a bit of a somber outcome, but I'm quite sure our council will make the very best of what's available for the local people. And basically, agree with the sentiment, your sentiments, Dougie, and what you've said. And so, talk unnecessarily. That's me. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, John. Okay, any others? Okay, can we go to the recommendations? Can we agree with the recommendations? Okay. Going now to the capital investment programme, building a future in East Ayrshire, and presenting that is Andrew Kennedy.
Thank you, Chair. This report provides Cabinet with an update on the capital investment plan, sets out the challenging market conditions and financial environment, and also provides an update on the outcomes of the initial review of the remaining capital programme. This morning, I will set out the information in the report, but focus on the significant financial challenges, as Joe has already mentioned, the review process undertaken so far, and highlight further areas that focus the recommendations in the report on areas of further challenge and actions that we propose to take. As members are aware, the Council is committed to, over the past 15 years, an ambitious and comprehensive capital programme with over £1 billion investment across all communities in East Ayrshire. This has been supported by significant external investment, however, has largely been funded by borrowing, while borrowing rates were low. As has been starkly outlined by the Chief Financial Officer, the circumstances have shifted dramatically. With COVID, cost of living, inflation and market pressures, our capacity to continue as is has gone. The benefit of investing in our assets is not diminished. The asset management framework principles and the direct link to our strategic plan continues to be relevant and important, and this is set out in paragraphs 5 to 15. However, as we plan for the future, our investment needs to focus and reflect the financial circumstances we are in. Paragraph 16 to 35 sets out the consideration of our priorities for the capital programme and the significant market pressures that have been the basis of this initial review of the whole programme. It is clear this reinforces the challenging circumstances and is the basis of the recommendations of the report and the focus of future work. The appendix in the report also sets out the recommended allocations across the whole programme and reflects the challenges and the review undertaken by CMT and offers across the Council to consider project scope, external investment, strategic ambition, service and community needs. We have looked for opportunities to reduce the scope, increase external income, manage timelines and challenge needs where projects are not fully defined. Paragraph 41 to 124 sets out the detail of the priorities, considerations and implications of the proposed rebasing of the programme. However, I would note that even with the recommended changes and reducing the spend on the programme, as Joe's already highlighted, the programme still remains above the affordability cap over the next few years. I appreciate members may have specific questions in terms of projects and different themes, so I don't intend providing kind of further narrative on a line-by-line basis. However, I would provide some common themes and context. The learning estate remains our biggest investment and the largest percentage of our buildings portfolio. Previous ambition based on unsuccessful LEAP funding has had to be tailored to prioritise needs around ASN, addressing poor condition areas of our buildings and planning for deteriorating mechanical and electrical components. It is clear cost pressures at Stuart Academy project has required a scaling back on what we can do within the budget. But due to challenging conditions of the LEAP funding, the Doon campus costs have increased significantly and will require further review. We know demographic changes and the impact of school roles is affecting our communities differently, and this has and will continue to shape our priorities. Property management plan will be presented to the next cabinet and provide more detailed assessment of our buildings with further action areas to ensure our estate meets our needs, and we are focusing on ensuring we retain efficient accommodation. This is linked directly to service change, and there remains investment needs in these areas outlined in the report. More and more, these will be clearly focused on reducing operating costs and maximising the value of our assets. The roads and infrastructure investment remains significant and continues to attract external funding. However, we are also seeing that being put under pressure, for example, with the bus station, where we are still in discussions with SPT to ensure ongoing funding for the improvement works through their capital funding is still provided, but clearly at the moment their level of funding has significantly reduced. Again, budget allocations have been challenged and priority areas realigned to focus on key project areas and demands. A further roads asset management plan will be presented to members in an upcoming cabinet and provide further detailed information. Town centres, culture and leisure remains an important part of the overall programme, and members have seen significant investment targeted at supporting our communities. There remains targeted areas in the plan, but these continue to explore as many opportunities as we can to attract external funding. But we also need to be realistic and understand that we are not able to address all our ambitions, and decisions that reduce overall costs to the council should be prioritised. It's also recognised that the Kilmarnock Town Board funding of 20 million and the current leisure review may provide other opportunities to meet community needs in the future. The realignment of the overall programme also covers a wide range of investment needs and supports the management of assets across fleet, IT, community wellbeing and our outdoor environment. Again, managing needs and expectations, ensuring we maximise the life of our assets by taking care of what we have, and in some cases reducing thresholds for replacement and improvement will all need to be considered going forward. This is reflected in the recommendation to update the asset management framework, and we'll come back with 2 members on that in the coming months. Members understand this is a challenging report. It outlines a very difficult financial environment, recognise the construction market under real pressure, demonstrates a wide range of competing needs and outlines complex interdependencies. But I also believe it sets out our clear priorities, a framework for further action and a basis for future decisions. The report outlines the overall financial implications, and this is further reiterated in the revenue papers as Joe's presented, and the Treasury Management Plan that will be presented to Council tomorrow. I hope it also reassures members that as a Council, the financial and the project planning is proactive and looks to take a measured and professional approach as we continue to make major investment across East Ayrshire. Chair, I would refer members of Cabinet to the recommendations at the start of the report, but happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much, Andrew. Thanks for this report. I think it shows that we still continue to be ambitious for our area and try and deliver as much as we can. And I think we've got to press on any funding sources that we can to get additional money in, and continue to lobby government and elsewhere to get money in. But one of the driving forces behind this hitting the affordability gap is the inflation aspect of it, Andrew. And it seems, and I know this is not just East Ayrshire, it's right across local authorities. Is there anything peculiar to local authorities that we should be saying to government that they're putting, in terms of spec or whatever it is that's putting pressure on? Is there anything government can be doing, both UK and Scottish, that we should be putting pressure on to try and ease this situation? Because capital investment will get the country out of this economic situation it's in, you'd imagine. So there's a need for them to help us to invest in our communities, Andrew. So.
Thanks, Chair. There's probably a couple of areas in that. I mean, there is no doubt we've seen significant inflation over the last 2 years, and as Joe's presented in the papers, the inflation certainly has come back down, but we still see inflation rising, or sorry, stabilising at a lower level, but prices are still rising. And what we've effectively seen is that consolidation of an increase in cost over the last 3 years. So although inflation peaked about 10–11%, that's actually an increase in costs of nearly 30% over that period of time. So what we are seeing is certainly aspects of our construction where costs are 2–3 times what they were in 2018. So that's almost now built in. So there's a level of recognition, I suppose, I think around that in terms of the cost profile is different than inflation that I think needs to be considered. I think the second part is, and maybe kind of coming back to your kind of main point or thrust of your point, I think there is about standards and expectations. We are, through a lot of the projects we've got external funding from, is we are setting a very high bar and an ambitious bar to change how we are delivering things. Obviously to address climate change being one of the main themes around that. So there are new, different ways of operating, and the market isn't quite there yet. So we're effectively paying a bit of a premium to effectively develop and train people to meet these new standards. So I suppose that recognition of trying to do things a bit differently is also the bit that I think probably needs to recognise that costs a bit more than actually just continuing to do the same thing everybody's experienced with. And we're seeing that clearly around our school estate, but also in terms of the other funding standards that we're seeing as those kind of new, different ways of doing things is absolutely attracting a premium.
Thanks, Andrew. Graham?
Thanks, Dougie. I'm going to keep my comments kind of short and high level, as I know there's more detail to come in further papers. I'd like to thank Andrew for bringing the paper to us this morning. The report, I mean, it illustrates the external factors that are impacting the construction industry and our capital investment programme at the moment: cost of borrowing, inflation, and rising tender costs. However, it's clear for the report that the cost of borrowing is clearly the biggest factor at play. In paragraph 20 of the report, that's the one that really hits home for me. The cost of servicing £10 million of borrowing has risen from 15.2 million to 23.1. That's an eye-watering increase of 7.9 million over a 40-year term. And we have invested heavily in the capital programme over the last 15 years, taking advantage of the lower interest and our success at securing external funding. But with that being said, we do need to be honest with ourselves as a council, and we need to be honest with the public that these are very different and very difficult economic times right across the UK in terms of investing in large-scale capital projects. The huge rise in the cost of borrowing means that we really do need to have a closer look at how we get the best value from a capital investment programme going forward, both in terms of cost and of community benefit. But even though we're facing these difficulties, we still need to deliver for the communities. The Doon Valley campus, the Northwest Kilmarnock School Estate, and the Stewarton School Estate are prime examples of areas that require capital investment. And I look forward to more detail coming in future papers. So at this stage, I'm happy to agree with the overall approach of this initial review. Thanks, Dougie.
Thanks, Graham. Elaine, then Barry.
Thank you, Andrew, for your presentation to Cabinet today, and also thank you for producing such a reasonable report on such a multifaceted and complex situation. As you'd expect, I'd like to focus my attention on the sections on the learning estate. My interpretation of the report is this is a reprofiling of our current priority projects and a refresh of the budget allocation that signals the direction of the learning estate over the next few years. And I realise, as you pointed out, today's report is high level and there will be further property management plan details brought to future cabinets. However, when I look at the different school projects, I can split them into three distinct categories. The first one is projects with no change to their scope and no change to their budget allocation, which in my mind is a good position. The second category is projects with no change to the scope, but actually an increase to the budget allocation, which is an even better position to be in. And the last category is projects where the scope has been altered and the budget has been reduced. And it's that final category I want to focus my attention on today. So starting with the Doon Valley Community Campus, the 21 million project overspend, the wider borrowing implications and the uncertainty of the CPA objection on the timelines is a great concern. I'm conscious we have a scheduled visit to Doon Valley next week with officers and local ward councillors. So as part of that visit, I think it would be useful for councillors to be provided with a breakdown of the 21 million and the implications to the project timeline of any potential ministerial call-in procedure. I note that paragraph 54 on page 2 is remitting the Chief Education Officer and the Head of Facilities Property Management to review potential options and bring forward a further update to Cabinet. So I'm looking for clarification. Will that be a standalone report on the Doon Valley, or will that be part of the wider property management plan, and what target date has been set for that? Moving on to Student Academy and Laneshaw Primary, I note point 73 on page 55 explains that workshops have been held with the school's leadership to identify the areas where the scope of the Student Academy project could be reduced without impacting on essential needs. And for Laneshaw Primary, point 80 on page 56 indicates that following the introduction of modular accommodation, an extension to school is not required in the short term. Chair, I'd like to request a visit to Student Academy and Laneshaw Primary with the Head of Facilities and the Head of Education and local Ward 1 members who are interested to gain a greater understanding of these project alterations and what is deliverable within the budget in the short term. Moving on to Willowbank Secondary School and Onthank Supported Learning Centre, having recently visited the Ward 2 schools with the Chief Executive and the Head of Education, and being fully aware of the capacity strain at Willowbank, I'm supportive of the approach outlined in the report. However, I need to stress that all the Kilmarnock North West schools were held in a state of suspension for a considerable length of time while we waited for a light-free decision from the Scottish Government. So when I read the detailed scope of works for some of these projects needs to be developed, that does leave me a bit anxious. So I'm looking for reassurance that these projects can now move at pace, and in particular, certain aspects of the Onthank SLC that have been previously highlighted for attention can be tackled with urgency. Chair, the final points I want to make are for the Council's senior management team. We are very fortunate to have an active and dedicated Parent Council network and Parents Chair steering group. I would like to ask the CMT to consider ways to build on this with a view to improving consultation on strategic issues such as those contained in today's report. And another recent prime example where this would have been advantageous was the current proposals to remove the non-statutory subsidised school buses. So I appreciate I've covered quite a few asks there, so I can quickly summarise if that's helpful. I'm looking for additional project details for the party visit in Doon Valley next week, and clarification if there will be a standalone Cabinet report on that with the target date for completion. A site visit to Student Academy and Laneshaw Primary. Reassurance that the Kilmarnock North West projects that were held in suspension while we waited on the light decision can now move at pace. Prioritisation of the Onthank SLC requirements and the CMT to explore options to strengthen council consultations with parent bodies. Thank you.
Thanks, Elaine. I think the visits are an excellent idea. I don't see any issue with that. But maybe bring in Eddie just for some other points now.
Thanks, Leader. Thanks, Councillor Kevin. So there's a range of different things, as you say, in there. So there's some bits that are dead straightforward for us. So further work with parent councils, etc., is in school councils is absolutely. So however we can do that, we'll certainly build in that. And I know Linda already has really close relationships with it. So it's how we build that wider around that. Further detail around the visit down to Dunmellington, again, absolutely we can do that. We know all the detail and breakdown. Go just to the 20 billion, the 60 odd million pounds that and growing, as you know, we can do that. And the visits out to Sturton again, I think that makes sense. The purpose in the visits, you know, that we've done has been about so as members when they're taking decisions in this chamber actually have the eyes on and actually understand the local perspective and that rather than just see it written down by us as officers and folk have actually seen that. So of course the visits are there. That bit about will there be a single paper on Doon? That would make no sense given the discussion that you had, you know, again about prioritising Doon, looking at North West, looking at Sturton. The affordability, quite frankly, means that we need to find ways of actually reducing this overall, you know, capital programme. I don't know, I genuinely don't know where that would come from. We need to balance all the issues about affordability with that issue about inflation, with the issue about the borrowing costs, with about learning outcomes, demography and impact on local communities. There's a whole range of different things that we're going to have to balance across that. So actually taking any one of them and giving assurance, you're almost giving a negative assurance to another one. So if I gave you absolute assurance that we're going to do everything in either Doon, Kilmarnock North West or Sturton, I'm almost saying, if on an individual basis, I'm almost saying, well, I'm giving you assurance we're not going to do something in the others. The assurances are not for me to give. The assurances is for us to give you as best professional advice in the round around all the different things and for us to have that honest conversation we're talking about, you know, around that. So that's what we're saying we have to do in terms of this further review, in terms of the overall, you know, capital programme. So it's not about giving single assurance around anything. We are clear there are areas that we need to look at. We know we need to look at Doon. We know we need to look at Stuart. We know we need to look at North West, ASN, etc. So all them are absolute things that our ambition is to do. How we do that within the affordability without making severe cuts to services because of the revenue, you know, implications of them is the challenge that we have. Andrew, Joe and the team have done a range of things to actually bring this down. You know, as you can see within the papers just now, we're going to have to bring it down again and that's going to be tough. So we won't get everything that we want, but we need to be bringing the information here so as we can make the best professional advice to use so as that you are able to do that. And I absolutely do think the visits out help you really understand that. They've been fascinating for me, apart from absolutely loving going around early years and playing with the Waynes, of course, as well. Actually seeing and listening to folk there about what's going on has been just enlightening for us to do that. So no single assurance. I think that would be unfair of us to do that. But the assurance that we really do get close to understand so as we can give best professional advice.
Thanks, Eddie. Barry.
Thank you, Dougie. Just, I think, to echo some of the comments that Councillor Cowan has made, although I would seek to take it a bit further, and that would ask that Cabinet go and have a visit down to Doon Academy and, you know, potentially North West Kilmarnock schools or however you want to package it up in relation to the visits. But there are key locations where I think it's important that the key body that will make the decision should maybe have a look. Now, see the paper, and I see that the recommendations are suggesting, you know, a paper will come back to members during 2024. I think it's fair to say the cat is out the bag in relation to affordability. We've had that discussed at length earlier from Joe, and I think, as Councillor Batman said, it is important that we are honest with the public here. Whilst I don't want us jump into decisions, we need to take time to make the right decisions. It is important that we keep the public informed because there are key projects here that people are anticipating happening in their communities that ultimately won't happen going forward. A couple of key things I just wanted to, and perhaps, Andrew, you can give us some more clarity on this. I mean, obviously, due to the Scottish Government cutting SPT's funding, we are also now potentially a shortfall with finalising the Kilmarnock bus station. And perhaps you can give us some update on that. But welcome the report. Again, sobering reading. And the other thing I would ask is certainly out of all of this, and I know everybody will have a lot of asks, is that we make sure we are very, very careful around what we need to do for ASN, because, you know, Willowbank has been a success, but to the point of it is bursting at the seams, quite literally. We cannot take our eye off the ball there. Yes, there are projects that are needed throughout East Ayrshire. I would particularly ask members to bear that in mind. But I can ask the question of Andrew, and Chair, if you are willing, with the Chief Executive, perhaps arrange Cabinet to visit the key locations. I think that would make sense. Thank you.
Thanks, Barry. Drew's what? I'll get Andrew first, then I'll bring Drew.
Yes, sorry, Chair. Just to kind of quick response in terms of the SPT funding. As you've indicated, we were anticipating an agreement with SPT for multi-year funding. They've obviously significantly funded the bus station project up until now, but because of their funding cut, then they are in a process at the moment of just reviewing where they can obviously prioritise and provide some assistance in 24-25. So within the report, we've obviously indicated that there is a risk that we don't get that funding support from them for the final part of the contract, but colleagues in Ayrshire Roads Alliance are continuing to have discussions with them to make sure we can obviously maximise any available funding to support the completion of the project. But clearly the ask in terms of the allocation within there will allow the project to be completed.
Thanks. I did notice through the week there's been a wee bit of progress in the bus station. That's good to see a wee bit more pace there. I think that's what we need. Eddie, sorry.
So just to add to that about the bus station, and I know Andrew and David have confirmed this to me in the past, we're already under a contractual agreement to actually complete the bus station. So it's actually about where the funding comes from rather than if the bus station gets completed. So just for clarity, the bus station will get completed. It's just where the money comes from to pay for it that's actually the discussion point here.
Thank you. And sorry to jump in, just to kind of come back in that. Just in terms of the contract, obviously, Andrew, you're saying we were expecting multi-year funding. Of course we would have been. But I take it in terms of that deal with SPT, there's nothing obviously contractually that obliges them to pay anything, but we are on the hook, so to speak, in relation to the contract. Now, yes, it's going to be done, absolutely, and it's the right thing. We can't leave it half finished. It is beginning to look really good. But I just wonder what mechanisms there, and obviously we were expecting that funding, but what could we do to ensure that funding from SPT, if anything, Andrew?
I think
I'd first then maybe bring David.
I think that the way the SPT have reviewed their funding, they have looked at projects where there is kind of contractual commitments. So that does give us some hope that there is an agreement there. But I think in terms of clearly the contract that we've issued is obviously legally liability for us. Therefore, that's kind of the challenge in terms of how that's presented. I think it's certainly something we can look at and maybe provide some further information.
That'd be really helpful. Thank you.
To you, Chair. There's not much to add. I think the bottom line is the SPT and these kind of bodies allocate it on a year-by-year basis. So the expectation is, well, you know what you go get and they will honour within the year. They've then had their legs done in because they've had a very reduced capital budget and basically been told to spend all of it on the subway in Glasgow. So they are moving from funding various projects such as the bus station to funding nothing but the substation next year. So the issue comes in terms of the further commitments to future years, which are less binding than in year. So we'll maximise what's available this year. And then the question then and the ongoing dialogue with them is whether or not they feel in a position to provide any funding in future years where it was an indicative allocation that they're now trying to step back from. That's the kind of nub of it.
That's maybe Simon, can you get any light you can shed on this?
Yeah, thanks. Through you, Chair. The other part of this, as we've reported to members before, is that the project was delayed because of the supply of materials and additional works. So it was originally anticipated that we would have had the project completed within this financial year. So that was that was the original kind of intention and how the funding was originally hoped to be drawn down. And because it's been pushed into 24-25, there is this change around about SPT's funding. Just also to say, we're pressing the contractor to complete as much works as he can before the end of March. So he's working additional hours to do that, and we're taking other opportunities to like advanced purchase of steel work and to ensure we get as much spend within this financial year, maximising the grant. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks. Happy with that, man? Well,
Do you mind if I come back in?
Aye, sir.
Sorry again, and I don't mean to take up anybody else's time here, but I think it is important. Given there were delays, are they the fault or otherwise of the contractor? And is there any scope in relation to us being able to go back to the contractor in terms of those costs? Because equally, I get we need to finish this and it will be finished, but if we do not get any extra funding from SPT, this council's hit for it and it's what was left of the budget. And I'm just mindful, I'm just looking at different ways. I'm sure officers are doing that to make sure that our exposure is as minimal as possible. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks through you, Chair. It's a mixture of reasons why the project was delayed. Some of it could be down or could be demonstrated to be down to the contractor's progress, but other things are around about additional works that were uncovered that hadn't been anticipated when the contract was let. So it was more work for the contractor to do. And the material supply issues are again widely reported across the industry, were not the contractor's responsibility. So there's a mixture, but we do look through the contract to maximise through any claims that we could have against the contractor. However, on the flip side, the contractor will have legitimate claims for extension of time for additional works that were unforeseen.
yeah, that's helpful, Simon. Just for a bring in, I'm content with the cabinet getting down to all the. I don't think there's any issues with that, so happy to accede to that. Drew.
Thanks, Chair. It was just to agree with Councillor Douglas. I think that'd be a great idea to take the full cabinet down just to see what position we are in down in the Doon Valley, the Doon campus. It's the uncertainty that's really having a big impact on the community and the staff, the pupils, everybody. So I think that'd be a great idea to do. The SEPA, I think Simon and his team have actually addressed the SEPA issue, Elaine. So we'll see that when we're down in the visit, how they're going to address that with a flood risk scheme kind of thing. So I look forward to that. Thanks.
That's true. I think, yeah, and Paddy's point about public information, yeah, I think we need as much information because there's been so much, when you don't have accurate information, social media, there's quite a lot of misinformation appears and creates that wee bit of uncertainty, which is really unfair to the local community. Okay, anybody else in the capital report? Okay, can we agree the recommendations? Yep, now on to the East Ayrshire Health and Social Care Partnership. Oh, sorry, yeah, thanks, Christine. It's the end of the E items, so give the education folk a minute or so just to disconnect. Okay, members, item 4 now, the Health and Social Care Partnership, contribution and charging framework and approved charges. Craig? Oh.
I'll get it.
Yeah, I'm picking that up.
Oh,
Cheers. Yeah.
I'll at the back.
Okay, thank you. The purpose of this report is to present Cabinet with the annual alterations in respect of charges and contribution for social care services for the forthcoming financial year 2024-25 and to seek approval of an updated East Ayrshire Health and Social Care Partnership Social Services Contributions and Charging Framework. The summary at paragraphs 3 to 5 highlight that charging and contribution for services in East Ayrshire is based on the annual update of COSLA National Strategy and guidance for charging applying to non-residential care services. And within the national guidance, there is scope for local interpretation, and presented to Cabinet for consideration is the updated social care services contributions and charging framework that incorporates this national guidance, and the guidance is set out at Appendix 2 of the report. The report details inflationary uplifts to charges for social care services, which will be reflected in the Health and Social Care Partnership Revenue Budget 24-25, and seeks elected member approval to increase thresholds for income disregards and maximum charges to service users for a range of social care services. On an annual basis, a review is undertaken of rates, and we agree to pay for social care services. And this takes account of revised guidance available from COSLA, the Department for Work and Pensions, and from the Scottish Government. The contribution and charging framework explains how East Ayrshire Council considers and calculates the contribution to care that people will be expected to pay towards the social care services that they receive. And East Ayrshire Council charges are set in line with statutory requirements and national guidance, and are approved by elected members on an annual basis through the budget setting process. East Ayrshire Council sets a maximum charge above which service users cannot be charged, irrespective of the income-based charge or the indicative cost of the service or services provided. In terms of the non-residential charges, as in previous years, it's been recommended that threshold levels and calculation of tariff income increase in line with DWP benefits and COSLA guidance to ensure that revised charges do not have an adverse effect on service users' benefit increases. And Appendix 1 outlines the revised maximum charges for 2024-25. This Appendix 1 is important as it details how much an individual will be charged after this maximum charge is applied. East Ayrshire Health and Social Care Partnership benchmark favourably in terms of setting a maximum charge, and also over 50% of authorities don't set the maximum charge but charge individuals up to the total cost of their care package. Charges have not increased since April 2018, and we recognise costs have increased significantly over this period of time, and pay alone amounts to approximately 25% between 2019 and 2023 in terms of additional costs. And the partnership has taken the decision, pending approval, to uplift the maximum charge to an individual service user for non-residential social care services by 10% from the 2023-24 rate to £118.05 in 24-25. This represents an annual contribution of £6,155. The COSLA charging guidance recommends a differential in income disregard between service users over and under pension rate age, and this is aligned to DWP benefits available to people depending on their pension age. It takes account of disability benefits and a further buffer disregard of 25% to take account of other disability-related expenditure. It's proposed that in 2024-25, the threshold for income disregards are as noted at Table 1 at paragraph 28 of the report. If a person has income below these thresholds, there will be no contribution for social care services other than the flat rate charges, and this is in line with COSLA guidance. The Council also sets a rate of disregard of income above the thresholds, and it is proposed that this is maintained at a rate of 24-25 of a 40% disregard. East Ayrshire Health and Social Care Partnership benchmark favourable in terms of charges for community alarms and day services, and that's both nationally and across Ayrshire. And charges have not increased since April 2018, and here again we recognise that costs have increased over this period of time, and the Health and Social Care Partnership has taken that decision, pending approval, to uplift by 10% in respect of non-residential charges for social care services, and this is highlighted at the Table 2 at paragraph 30 in the report. I'd highlight the Blue Badge Disabled Parking Permit. This is a national flat rate charge at £20 and is valid for a period of 3 years. In respect of an individual's annual personal budget, it's proposed that charges will increase also by 10% from April 24, and this is set out at paragraph 31 and 32 of the report. And it's important to note that these increases in daycare charges and community alarm charges do not affect the cost to the individual and are reflected in the self-directed support personal budget amount that people can then choose the support that they wish to receive. For community meals, it's proposed to continue to the current subsidy of £1.02 per meal for the meals at home service. Paragraph 34 highlights that the Adult with Incapacity Scotland Act 2000 was introduced to protect individuals with incapacity and to provide support for their families and carers in managing, safeguarding the individual's welfare and finances. And the AWI Act introduced arrangements to help people aged 16 and over who lack capacity to make some or all of the decisions for themselves. And that supports the organisation in managing and safeguarding the welfare and the finances of the person. And as a result, access to funds and DWP appointeeships has been operating in East Ayrshire since 2011, and current numbers supported have increased substantially to 256 currently. All aspects of financial management is carried out, including budget management, payment of utilities, rent, council tax, insurance, as well as day-to-day living expenses. And funds are managed for those in the community and also those who are resident in care homes. And that the latter category has fewer transactions than those who are based in community, whose life can often be chaotic and require maximum support. So the table 3 at paragraph 39 details the proposed charges. And a weekly charge within a care home, that would be £3 per week, and in the community that would be £5 per week. And the cost to run the service is currently £250,000, and these charges will help to partially offset these costs to the tune of £59,000. In terms of rates paid for social care services, paragraph 43 and 44 highlight that the agreement on care home rates has yet to be finalised between Scotland Excel, COSLA, Scottish Care and the Scottish Government as part of the ongoing National Care Home negotiations. And paragraph 45 highlights that Scotland Excel fee negotiations with providers are ongoing in children's residential services, and this is expected to be concluded in the near future. So the recommendations of the report are outlined, 8 recommendations at paragraph 2 of the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Alec. Thanks for that report. Members, Barry.
Thank you, Dougie. Alec, thank you for the report. I'm not going to lie, I do have a slight concern about the community alarm charges being increased. However, I think just if we can get some information around sort of the benefit increases over the period and potentially pension uplift over that period, I'd be interested to hear a bit more about it. And the other thing, for a layperson, not coming from this background at all, the care home rates are not yet finalised. What does that really, what's the impact here for us not knowing that? Again, it just feels like there's other items in the previous reports we don't yet have an answer to, and here's another one where we don't yet have an answer to, and just how that impacts. Maybe Alec or Craig can come back to me, please. Thanks.
So maybe just picking up in the care home rate. So I think just what we've seen over the last number of days is probably National Care Home contract rate is nearing a conclusion round about that. So we'll hopefully get some clarity around about that in the coming absolute clarity and sort of finalisation in terms of we then need to agree variations to contract, etc. with the care home providers. So that is reaching an end point. Maybe in relation to your first point, Councillor Douglas, relative to benefit increases, etc. Appendix 1 to the report contains a kind of detail of a range of different scenarios that's really complex. As you appreciate, there's a whole range of different things there. So what I've got is a comparison to last year's to this year, not over the fact that also not increased charges probably for the last 5 or 6 years. So if you do it over that extended period of time, it would be a different answer. But if we take the first line in that appendix, single people over pension age living alone with higher age, attendance allowance, etc. Maximised income of £408.20. Last year it had been £379.20, so an increase there of £29 a week for that individual person if they met that type of criteria, against, as I say, the alarm increase of 40 odd pence a week that we're proposing. So there's a £29 increase that person would get if that was the suite of benefits that we're on. For an individual on the new state pension and nothing else at all, then the weekly increase there is £17.35 between last year and this year. But again, if you look to that over a rolling 5-year period, it would clearly be much more significant, which is the last time that we did increase charges. As I say, I'm happy to share. I know that these are just a range of scenarios, but we can work out what the increase is year on year, if that's helpful to show you last year's compared to this, if that helps. But as I say, just that first one in there is £29. The other one, over pension age with low rate attendance allowance for a single person, is £21.65 a week. So they're all somewhere probably between £20 and £30 a week of an increase. Hopefully that's helpful.
And I think that does help. I think from the point of view of if we are taking this decision, as I say, we have kept that charge. We haven't increased it since 2018. It's a long time. I get that. Yes, things have gone up. It's always one where certainly I have felt that we need to kind of hold the line on it. I accept, however, given where we are in relation to uplifts and benefits and pensions, if what you're telling me is anywhere really between that sort of 17 and £29 a week uplift, then I can accept it on that basis. Thanks.
Thanks, Barry. Anyone else? Okay, can we go to recommendations? Can we agree? Okay, thank you. And on to council tax premium for second homes and address this.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. This report provides an update on the amended council tax regulations, which now allow discretionary powers to charge a second home premium and seeks approval to apply this premium from the 1st of October. So paragraphs 3 to 5 provide some background to the legislation. Following public consultation last year, the amended legislation was laid before Scottish Parliament on the 19th of December and it comes into force on the 1st of April. A new second home premium aligns with the long-term empties premium. It aims to remove any financial incentive to switch between uses and also to reduce the potential for levy avoidance. Paragraph 6 to 11 details the proposed policy changes. So under our current council tax policy, a 100% premium is applied to properties which are empty for over 12 months. This effectively doubles the council tax charge, and it's been in place since 2018. A second home is not classed as a sole or main residence, but is lived in for at least 25 days in the year. And currently second homes are billed at the full amount of council tax, but with no premium applied. Under the new council tax policy, the long-term empty premium remains unchanged at 100%. And any new owner of a previously long-term empty property would have a grace period increased from 3 months to 6 months. And this is proposed to take effect from the 1st of April. Second home premiums will now have a premium, second home owners will now have a premium of 100% applied. Any new second home owner will have a grace period of up to 6 months if the property is undergoing repairs or renovations that contribute to its improvement. To give the existing second home owners time to consider their ownership, it's proposed that this takes effect from the 1st of October. Paragraphs 12 to 15 outline the financial implications. So we currently have 93 second homes registered in East Ayrshire. If we assume that there's no change to this, the increased revenue for 24-25 would be 61,500, and that would rise to 123,000 next year if everything remains unchanged. It's recommended that these additional revenues are not ring-fenced, and that would be allowed spending decisions to be flexible, adaptable, and based on local priorities. Paragraphs 16 to 19 outline the implementation arrangements. So we would propose to, during April, write to all second home owners, informing them of the premium and the discretion options. This would serve as notice that the premium would be applied from the 1st of October. We will be updating the council's corporate web pages and the online forums to ensure that the full and complete information is available to everyone. And any new second home owner who takes ownership on or after the 1st of October would have the 100% premium automatically applied unless they qualified for the grace periods. So the recommendations are provided at paragraph 2, and it asks that members approve the increase of the council tax charges for second homes with the premium applied from the 1st of October. Note the discretions that are available to new owners and otherwise note the contents, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Ruth. Quite interesting paper in terms of 93 properties identified, but I must pale attention significance compared to our seaside neighbours there. Barry.
Thank you, Dougie. I really welcome this legislation, I have to say. In fact, a perfect quote actually was from Councillor Katie Hagman, who is, you might hear a wee bit more about her tomorrow in my speech, from Dumfries and Galloway. She obviously is a COSLA spokesperson, and in welcoming this this policy, she'd said, it allows local politicians who are closest to their communities to take decisions about what best suits local needs and circumstances. If only that was the same for the council tax. Anyway, I really do welcome it, and I think that I would, rather than it go to October, I think we should bring it forward and say people have got 3 months. Grace, 3-month period to bring it in. October's a long way away. It's been fairly well trailed, I think, in the news that this is coming. From my point of view, I would look to reduce the time that we're giving them, but happy to take others' views.
I wouldn't have any strong problems with that. Is there any issues with bringing that forward, Ruth? Or?
Operationally, no, there wouldn't be.
How does the rest of the cabinet feel? Is that a reasonable thing to bring forward?
I think so.
I'm quite happy to go to can we do that? Add that to amendment to bring that forward. Would that be okay?
Yep, we can do that within the 3-month period.
There you go. Okay. Okay, with that added to the recommendations, can we agree the recommendations? Okay, and now we're closing the press and public, and could I ask IT colleagues to stop the recording?